Welcome to Women's Sports Weekly, where women's sports happens every day, but we talk about it once a week. I'm Danielle.
And I'm Carolyn. Women's Sports Weekly is a podcast where we discuss the latest news, explore interesting stories, and share our love for women's sports. Follow us on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok at Women's Sports Weekly Pod. Follow us and rate us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Oh my gosh, are we tired?
I am exhausted, but all for good reason. It was a great weekend.
Oh, it was so good. We are going to do a deep dive into the Women's Final Four. Let's get into it.
Women's Final Four was in Cleveland, Ohio. We had the privilege of going again this year, and my best friend was there, Erica, her husband, Tommy, and as per usual, a bunch of other Moravian prior coaches, current coaches. Always good to catch up with that crew and see so many people I went to school with.
Cleveland was taken over by a bunch of jocks who wanted to watch basketball, and also in Cleveland was the solar eclipse. So it was this great combination of jocks and nerds all in one place.
Yeah.
And some who wear both hats.
I didn't even know the eclipse was happening this weekend until I was in Cleveland and they were giving away t-shirts on the streets. So definitely an interesting combination.
So let's talk about this historic weekend. Let's go into the first game, South Carolina over NC State, 78-59.
South Carolina won. So Isaiah James plays for NC State. She's been playing really well throughout the entire tournament, and she had 20 points for NC State during that game. I will say the first half of that game, I was pretty nervous because it was a close game, especially in the first quarter. South Carolina just looked a little nervous, understandably, but NC State, on the other hand, not so much. They were just draining shots. South Carolina was missing shots they usually make. They just did not look like themselves. And I was like, I really hope they can pull this together.
And I saw nerves on South Carolina for the first time, where especially among the freshmen, Malaysia Fulwiley, you could just tell it was just, the moment was really big and they needed to get out some of that jitters. Luckily, they're a good enough team that they could have a slower first half and really come back in the second half and dominate. They held Sanaya Rivers to 5 points. Camila Cardoso went off with 20 points and 12 rebounds, a double-double for her.
For South Carolina.
Yes. And then Ashlyn Watkins for South Carolina had 20 rebounds.
That's incredible. That's an incredible stat.
8 points for her. Just a crazy stat line. South Carolina came up on top 78-59. It was a great primer for them to head into the championship, and also a great primer for the rest of the night.
Yeah, for sure. I think they definitely took control during the second half of that game, and the score reflects that they pulled away, and it seemed like they had it in the bag. So it was nice to see them settle in. Great start to the Final Four. One of the things I noticed is there were definitely less fans for that game, which we always get annoyed about. And it's interesting because I'm like, people are spending all this money to attend both games because usually it's a package deal to attend those two games versus one or the other. And a lot of people were there to see Caitlin Clark in Iowa. They were just missing out, I think. I mean, you pay all this money and you don't come to both games. Just something I noticed and to kick off the weekend there.
Exactly. And it wasn't by any means empty.
No.
But there were less. And we noticed this last year at the Final Four game when Iowa wasn't playing. And again, this year, the majority of the people there were Iowa fans.
Correct.
However, this first game between South Carolina and NC State, you could tell that not everybody was in the arena. And this is where I struggle a bit, because if you are going to be a women's sports fan, I feel, and I know this is my own personal feeling, but I feel like you need to come and support everyone. It made me upset that not all the Iowa fans were there.
Yes, I agree. They did fill in because UCONN versus Iowa was the next game of the night, and Iowa ended up winning 71-69. Throughout this whole game, I really had no idea who was going to go home with the win because it was just a battle back and forth. I honestly, for a big portion, thought UConn was going to win it.
They looked like it was rolling in their favor a little bit more. The other hard thing about being there in person that I noticed this year is that because you don't have the commentators, I'm just in it in a way that I'm experiencing it. The South Carolina game was very stressful for me because I didn't have commentators saying the stat lines or anything like that. It was just me watching, and I felt like I almost couldn't understand it as well because I was just so in the moment that it felt really big.
And you're not seeing replays. You don't get to, like, if a foul's called and you're looking at something else, so you didn't see that up close. And granted, our seats were not courtside. And they don't replay that on the jumbo screen. So it's like, was that a foul? Was it not a foul? I don't know.
I have a problem with that they weren't replaying
the foul calls. I also understand why they don't, because I've seen games on TV where they replay it and a fan base has lost their mind, whether it was the right call or not. Some people don't. They'll just argue anything. So I think protection of players and refs, I can see why they don't play it in that environment. And also it kind of stinks to be there and not be able to see. It's a little frustrating from that perspective.
We're texting friends and family like, was that a foul?
Yes.
Was that a travel?
Because they're replaying it for them on the screen at home. So that's definitely interesting. Another interesting thing about that game is for years and years and years, anyone who has known women's basketball over the years knows UConn has had years over years, decades of success.
Yes.
Decades of followers. To sit in that arena and there be more Iowa fans than even UConn fans was an interesting dynamic.
I mean, Iowa fans really showed up and showed out. My hope is that they continue to do so. I hope that the fandom doesn't end here. And whether they support Iowa or continue to support women's sports, I hope that continues. And I have a fear that it might not, but I really hope I'm wrong on that.
I think when you have players like this, it brings attention to the game itself. As a result, brings attention to other players and other teams. Hopefully, they see the game and realize how much talent is out there outside of her and do come back or do continue to watch. And I am hopeful that will happen, because I know even I've read before that the NBA was close to bankruptcy, and then you have Larry Bird and Magic Johnson and that brought it back up, and then Michael Jordan. So I think in any sport things can ebb and flow, and I'm hoping this is just the start of a rise in women's sports specifically. Back to UConn versus Iowa. Aaliyah Edwards and Paige Beckers both play for UConn, and they both had 17 points. KK Arnold, a freshman for UConn, had 14 points. So they had a lot of scores in that game.
They did. And Nika Mule also had 9 points. She put on a defensive show for UConn. She held Caitlin Clark to 21 points. UConn is going to be scary next year.
Yes. They actually just signed the #1 recruit in the country for next year, and they have a lot of players coming back. So they are going to be stacked.
We sat around dinner over the weekend and we were like, okay, who's going to be in the Final Four next year? And it was unanimous. Everyone was like, UConn. Yes. They're going to be there.
South Carolina, UConn, I think everyone agrees that it would be unlikely that they're not there again.
We'll put our foots in our mouths in a year, I guess.
Right. Iowa, Hannah Stolke on Iowa also had a big game. She had 23 points. Let's get into what happened at the end of the game, because back and forth, like I said, UConn missed a lot of big shots at the end, and in the fourth quarter that hurt them and led them to this point.
UConn has the ball with 9 seconds left. They're down 1 point, 70-69. Gino is a great coach. Every time they pass over half court, they look to him, they get a play.
And they just came off a timeout.
And we're going to see something here. A moving screen is called on Aaliyah Edwards on UConn and pretty much effectively ended the game.
Yes, we didn't even get to see what the play was because she set the screen. Gabby Marshall went flying. She sold it.
She did.
She 100% sold that hit. I looked back at the replay of even my dad talking to him is like, it was a foul, and he's the biggest UConn fan I know. Yeah. So even hearing him say that, I was like, whoa. But do you call that at the end of the game like that when it wasn't a blatant foul?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Iowa fans would be like, why wouldn't you call a foul, right?
Yeah. I mean, they're yelling foul after every single play. So it was just upsetting to see that happen and the game to basically end there, because UConn never got a shot off. They never had a chance to even put a shot up and see if they can go up by either 1 or 2 points, which was so it just deflated everyone on the court on the UConn side, at least.
It felt like the call was actually just very strange, because us in the arena, we were like, hold on, what? That didn't look bad. It didn't look bad in real time at all. Watching it back, you're like, okay, I can see it. It just felt like it was a little too close, and they hadn't been calling moving screens, so it just felt like a strange call with 9 seconds left. And I don't want to go into conspiracy theory land on it.
No, please don't.
I won't. Who knows what would have happened? It just was like, ooh. And then I was thinking about it. It's really strange to see Iowa get benefit of the doubt calls that UConn got for years. Like whenever any team plays UConn, you know that UConn's going to get the benefit of the doubt calls and UConn's going to get a good call here and there because of who they are. And to see Iowa get it, I was like, oh, I bet this is really tough for UConn fans to swallow.
And really tough for Gino because the best player on the court was not on UConn's team. So Caitlin Clark is going to, and her teammates are going to get those calls. So it definitely is interesting. I was rooting for UConn during that game, which is weird to even say. I'm not an Iowa hater. I just think I like to root against a team sometimes, and especially with all the fans in there. And my family has a bunch of UConn fans. So I was like, all right, I'm going to root for UConn tonight. And I really like those players. I love Paige Beckers, Aaliyah Edwards. There's so many players on that team that I really enjoy watching. They did lose, and Iowa faced off South Carolina for the final, which at the end of the day, I think is what everyone wanted. Yeah. South Carolina wanted that. I wanted to see that matchup again because, as Raven Johnson puts it, it was the revenge tour. They lost to Iowa in the semifinal game last year. So for them to be able to face them again in the national championship on the biggest stage is pretty cool.
And it was like, which story do you want more? Do you want the story of South Carolina going undefeated and beating the team that they lost to last year? Or do you want Iowa, who lost in the national championship last year, to finally get their national championship?
To get her national championship ring.
Exactly. And I feel like most people wanted Iowa to win. At least most people we were around and talking to, except for us. We wanted South Carolina to win.
And even I question myself. I'm like, if you didn't go to South Carolina or I didn't know you, like I've been following South Carolina since we started dating, which has been almost 9 years now.
Sure.
So I have all that history. A lot of people don't have that history. And the media did not give South Carolina a ton of attention this year. If I'm being honest, I probably would have been rooting for Iowa under different circumstances too if I wasn't following Gamecocks. So it's just interesting to think, like, if I wasn't watching it as much and falling in love with that team and falling in love with Dawn Staley, I don't know. It's possible.
And it is interesting. I think Caitlin Clark and Iowa should have been getting all of the media coverage. Yes. And how do we have an undefeated team that some people don't even know about?
Right.
Some people didn't even know till this week that there was an undefeated team playing in the Final Four.
And I bet most people in that arena couldn't name a single player on South Carolina, which is upsetting, honestly.
It is, because they're so good and they have so many players and they don't have that singular star that they just were kind of forgotten this year, but not anymore. So let's get into it.
Yes. Championship game. I'm going to let you take this one away because you can finally relax now. Gamecocks have won. They beat Iowa.
South Carolina beat Iowa 87-75. We just woke up from a nap and I think it was really an adrenaline dump from this whole weekend. To say I was stressed would be an understatement. Yes. I was stressed in the NC State game. I was having to do my breathing exercises before South Carolina and Iowa. I had to tell myself why I was here, and my reason for why I was in Cleveland was to have fun and to watch good basketball. And I had to remind myself that, which sounds so crazy. But when you're a South Carolina athletics fan, you know what it feels like. And if I have any South Carolina fans out there, you know what this is. You know what it feels like to have a really good team and then for them just to lose in a moment where it's just heartbreaking. So South Carolina fans know heartbreak. Iowa starts off the game with a 10-0 run, and I was nervous. I would have loved to see my heart rate. It had to be in the high 170s at that point. They fell behind real early. However, Dawn is sitting on the bench cool as a cucumber.
There were definitely some times throughout the game that she lost it, but in those moments, if you start losing it in the first 5 minutes of the game, you're screwed as a coach. You have to keep your composure there. And she did just that.
And I just feel like as a player to look over at your coach who's not even standing up, who's sitting on the bench and not defeated by any means. No. She's engaged in the game, but calm and collected. Like, yeah, we've been in this situation before. It's no thing.
I think it says something about Dawn being a player, being on that stage, knowing what it's like. It's natural to have nerves and maybe start off the game not as strong as you normally would. So
Caitlin Clark goes off in the first quarter. She has 18 points.
18 points is a championship record for the most points scored in a quarter, which I was like, oh my God, she is on fire right now. This is not good for South Carolina.
I was stress sweating, looking around, surrounded by Iowa fans. We did have some South Carolina fans near us too, which was good. Helped me. Luckily, your best friend Erica provides great comedic relief.
She was definitely helping calm me down, and I think you as well.
Oh, for sure. I needed that.
She was making me laugh.
Raven Johnson for South Carolina played great defense while guarding Caitlin Clark.
During the time that Raven Johnson was guarding Caitlin Clark was held to 7 points and she was 3 for 11 shooting. You cannot deny how well Raven Johnson played defense on her because I don't know if that's been done this season.
And Raven Johnson said that she wanted to play Iowa. You could tell last year's game, this South Carolina team was very affected by it.
Yes.
I don't think they saw the loss coming, and I think everyone was very upset by it. And South Carolina was doing something really interesting where they had a hand in Caitlin Clark's face the entire game, like a hand directly in her eyes.
Yep.
I don't know who thought to do that. It looked annoying from my standpoint.
Yeah,
and we were way high up. Yeah. Before the first half ended, Caitlin Clark was bringing up the ball for the last shot. And Raven Johnson, just stellar defense, poked the ball away from her, got a steal, got a layup.
That was such a great way to end the half.
That is something that will replay in my mind for years to come.
For sure.
And I also felt like it was a turning point in the game. It just deflated Iowa and deflated Caitlin Clark in a way headed into the half that I think was really, really important for the Gamecocks. And then they came out in the second half and South Carolina looked really good.
And I think South Carolina in general, I remember thinking this during the game, even if Iowa tries to run the ball, which they do a really good job of, because Hannah Stolke on Iowa, their center, does a really great job of running the floor, and Caitlin Clark will get her the ball.
Yes.
But what South Carolina does really well is when they get the ball back on offense, they know how to control a game. At times, I can see when they're nervous, but I would never think they're really helter-skelter. What are they doing? I see it more so, they're missing shots they normally make, things like that.
Yep.
But they know how to control the game and they work so well together. I can just tell they felt in control. Also, to end the half, Iowa got the ball back and they couldn't even get a shot off.
Yeah.
They were in position to get a shot off, but South Carolina's defense was on point. And I really do agree with you that definitely was a turning point, or at least set the tone for the game headed into the locker room at halftime. Another player we have to talk about, another freshman. So Tessa Johnson, I don't think has been getting as much credit as a lot of other freshmen. Granted, how many points did she have per game leading into the NCAA tournament?
So she was averaging something like 6 points per game leading into the tournament.
Okay.
And she wasn't
playing big minutes either as a freshman.
She was coming off the bench.
Yep.
As most players on South Carolina do, and she was putting in good minutes.
And I would say Mylasia Fulwiley is the freshman who's been getting the most attention on South Carolina this year. So Tessa Johnson had a career high in a national championship game her freshman year. This girl was literally in high school a few months ago.
And she's got this cute little baby face.
Yeah, she's
baby
a freshman.
Face killer.
And career high 19 points.
She could not
She
miss.
was on fire. It was so cool to see her have a day like that, especially on that stage. I can't even imagine.
And I can't imagine how frustrating it must be for Iowa. I was looking over. So the other thing at halftime, Caitlin Clark looked tired. And South Carolina just throws bodies at you. And now you have someone coming off the bench who's scoring 19 points. It's like, oh my gosh, I thought I had to just worry about Camila Cardoso down low. And now I have this freshman who came out of nowhere, it seemed like, and dropped 19 points. She was shooting threes. She was shooting jumpers. She was everywhere and making everything.
Congrats to Tessa Johnson. She also made all-tournament team. And then Camila Cardoso.
She won the tournament's most outstanding player. She dominated the paint, 15 points, 17 rebounds. She was down there, it seemed like, by herself with just a bunch of Iowa players around her and dominated down there. And again, the defense was deflating. She had some crazy blocks. Iowa would come down, score a point. South Carolina would come back. Bree Hall would get like an easy 2. Iowa would come down and then Camila Cardoso would block something. Again, it was just this deflation that kept happening. And then Iowa would try to rim run and Mylasia Fulwiley was making, she jumped 4 feet off the ground at some point just to get a ball out of bounds to make sure that they just did not get the momentum. As a South Carolina fan, it made my heart flutter. But I could just tell and see how deflating it was for Iowa. And South Carolina's bench scored 37 points off the bench while Iowa had 0. Dawn Staley became the first Black coach in D1 basketball to complete an undefeated season. A perfect season, 38-0. Can you imagine being a freshman on the team and never knowing what it feels like to lose? Like, you've never seen your coaches, your teammates react to a loss before.
And at this level, to be able to go undefeated is truly amazing. I don't know if people realize how incredible that is. And not to mention, they almost lost to Tennessee earlier in the year. And somehow Cardoso finds a way to hit a 3 at the buzzers. They had been in those positions where the game was on the line and they still came out on top. They didn't just mow over teams all season. They were put in tough positions and were still able to win. And I'm so happy for them.
I am too. And there were conversations and interviews that I listened to where the players and the coaches said, if you saw us in June, you would never think we would be here. Tahina Paopao talked about how all they did leading into the season was run because people were messing up. They weren't gelling as a team. Things were happening. Dawn said it repeatedly. And then they said that they might have something special right when they got to Paris and they put on a show with Notre Dame. And that was when it was like, oh, we might actually have something here. But they started off in a rough spot. And so I was obviously just very happy to see it. No matter what happened, if Iowa won, it would have been a great story. South Carolina winning is a great story. It was just a great weekend.
These are 5 completely different starters than their team last year that almost went undefeated. Kudos to Dawn Staley. The players, it is crazy how obvious it is how much they love Dawn Staley. They respect her so much. I was seeing things all over Instagram that players saying they would run through a wall for her. They immediately hug her after the game. Just the way the players interact with her and the other coaches on the staff, you know there's so much trust there. And that makes or breaks a team sometimes.
Yes.
Like, talent can take you so far. And on top of that, you have that extreme trust and respect for each other. It's really cool to see.
Definitely a coach I would love to play for if I ever had an ounce of athletic ability. All right, let's get into what we loved about this weekend. So in every Final Four, they do this thing called Tourney Town. And it's pretty much just an exhibit set up for children where they have events going on.
There's adults in there too.
Well, yeah, we are the adults in there.
There's other adults in there.
There are adults with their children in there.
Okay. I love Tourney Town. I somehow missed Tourney Town last year in Dallas when we were at the Final Four. So this year I knew I needed to get back there.
How many times did we go?
Did we go 3 times?
At least.
To be fair, the first morning we went, we were on a run and you spotted Tourney Town.
Yep.
So you were like, well, should we just go in?
And nothing makes you happier than Tourney Town. It is your Disneyland. I am not going to take that away from you. You turn into a kid and it's the cutest and just the best thing ever. So I was like, let's go into Tourney Town.
It was great setup. When we went in, the cool thing about it is not many people, like, they had just opened up. So not many people were in there. Throughout the rest of the times we were there, it was pretty much packed. So we got to try different competitions when we were in there, get some giveaways. It was cool also to see the bands and the cheerleaders and the mascots walking around. You got to get a picture with Cocky. We got a selfie with Cocky.
I love Cocky.
So that was a great start to the weekend. We saw some of the Texas players.
Yes.
So that was fun. And then I was like, I cannot wait to bring Erica and Tommy back to Tourney Town. So we went back later. Me, Erica, and Tommy were doing most of the competitions, but you did a few of them.
I did a few, but it's embarrassing for me. I am airballing shots. It's more fun for me, honestly, to watch the joy in everyone's faces and to carry everyone's stuff.
If you do have the chance to go to a Final Four, no matter what age you are, get your butt to Tourney Town. It is so great. They have WNBA players there. They have different people. They put on panels and meet and greets, and they really do a great job of setting it up. It's just like a fun way to engage, and the community, the city who's there, like, anyone could go to Tourney Town. You don't need to have tickets to the event to go to Tourney Town. So if the Final Four happens to be in your city one year, check it out because it's pretty
great
cool
for kids. And so one of the multiple times we were there, we saw Candace Parker was going to be in the AT&T area.
As soon as I saw that on the screen, I took a picture of the time and date that she was going to be there, and I made it clear to everyone, I need to go to this.
We did, and we went right before the South Carolina-Iowa matchup before the final, and we got in line and we waited for about 45 minutes. Candace Parker came out the door
that we were standing right next to. And if anyone does not know this, Candace Parker is my long longtime idol since a kid. When she was playing at Tennessee and I was in high school, I was obsessed with her pretty much. Like,
I mean, not pretty much. You were obsessed with her. You wrote her Facebook messages.
I was obsessed with Tennessee. I was obsessed with Candace Parker. I was obsessed with Pat Summitt. I painted my room orange and blue.
When I met you, your room was still
that color. But before you met me, I also had a Tennessee lampshade above my bed. I had Tennessee basketballs on different sizes that I won at Seaside one year. My sister Amanda made me a sick Tennessee blanket that I even brought to college. Anyways, my obsession for Tennessee when Pat Summitt was there and when Candace Parker was a player ran deep, and continued to love Candace Parker when she went to the league. Yeah. So when I saw that she was going to be there, I was like, I never in a million years thought I'd get to meet her.
And so it was a meet and greet thing. It was great. She walked out and all of us, just our jaws dropped.
She's so tall. It's crazy.
She's so tall, one. I knew she was pretty.
Yes.
I knew she was beautiful. She walked out and my jaw dropped. I was like, this is the most beautiful person I've ever seen. Her outfit was on point. Her skin on point. Makeup on point. Hair on point. I was like, oh my gosh. I couldn't even imagine what you were feeling knowing that you just loved her so much when you were younger.
And then to see her mom, daughter, and son there was really cool. I felt bad because I was staring at them, but it's so weird when you see people on social media, on TV. Mm-hmm. So we waited online. I said to you, I need a picture just with me and Candace. Yeah. Like, I need this.
Fine. If I was in the first picture anyway, I would have gotten cropped out. Which I said to Candace Parker. I was like, my wife had to go with you alone or else I would have been cropped out of that.
And she laughed. She got a kick out of that. Yes. I also told her that I painted my room Tennessee orange because of her. And she said, thank you for telling me that. I don't even know if she was really hearing everyone that was talking to her because so many people were. That has to be a stressful job for her. But I appreciated how nice she was, and it was not a long interaction by any means. But I had my arm around Candace Parker. Like,
I know. I thought I was never gonna see you again. When she walked out that door, I was like, "Ooh, I'm in trouble."
I was shaking for probably an hour after that because the adrenaline of building up the courage to say what I wanted to say to her. I get very stressed when I meet people I admire, and damn, that was stressful, but really cool.
It was a great start to the day. It was a good omen heading into the Iowa-South Carolina game. We also got to be in Coach Jackie's TikTok.
Yes, if you are on TikTok and ever seen Coach Jackie's videos, she's very entertaining and she comes up on my feed all the time. So I saw her and recognized her right away. And we were in her video. She was going around with a mini mic with her dad, so cute, asking people how long it took them to get to the Final Four. Like, how far did people travel?
And thank God for Coach Jackie's editing skills, because how many miles did you say we were from Cleveland?
I think I said around either 13,000 or 16,000. Okay. I've driven to Colorado from New Jersey before, and we've done it both ways. And I get confused with 1,600 and 16,000.
I think it's 1,300.
So to get to New Jersey, it's 1,600. But I was so excited and nervous. I was on camera and I said 13,000. She goes, I don't know. Ask my dad. He's from Denver. And he goes, it's about 1,000 miles. So luckily she only added in where I said it was a 3-hour flight. Thank you, Coach Jackie, if you're listening. We gave you a sticker, so hopefully you are.
Thank God that we edit this podcast because we make mistakes all the time. We also got to see Jason Sudeikis, who was supporting Iowa. So after the game, after the Iowa-South Carolina game, we went down to the lower level to watch some cut nets and just be part of the action. And we ended up on Iowa's side because we had no idea where we were going because we were sitting in the nosebleed section. And we walked in and it was Caitlin Clark's parents, her brothers, her boyfriend, Jason Sudeikis, right in front of our face.
Just giving hugs to her entire family.
What a surreal moment for you to just be a regular schmegular person. Caitlin Clark's parents are not regular schmegular, but a normal person. Your daughter becomes this phenomenon, and then she loses her national championship game, which is heartbreaking. And then you have Jason Sudeikis giving you his condolences. It just must be mind-blowing.
And some of our listeners might know Jason Sudeikis as Ted Lasso. So if you're wondering who this is, it's Ted Lasso. He's been really big supporter. I would say over this past year, last WNBA season, he was going to a lot of New York Liberty games. For anyone who has seen the Everyone Watches Women's Sports shirts, that's from Together, which is founded by Sue Bird, Alex Morgan, and a few others. And Jason was wearing the shirt. Other people that they showed on the Jumbotron, Jalen Hurts, who's the quarterback of the Eagles. Yep. Dawn Staley is from Philly. She always supports the different Philly teams. So it was really cool to see him there. Machine Gun Kelly was there.
Yes.
You had a ton of WNBA players there who I was wishing I could have seen more people.
Kelsey
but I
Plum, Brianna Stewart.
Megan Rapinoe was there.
Brittany
Asia
Griner.
Wilson. Aaliyah Boston.
And then after the game, we got to go near the ESPN booth where Andrea Carter, Elle Duncan, Chinea Gumake, and Aaliyah Boston were. They did such a great job.
And Carolyn Peck was in that lineup.
Yes. They did such a great job this tournament.
This whole tournament, watching them on TV, I get such a kick out of them. And to watch them up close and personal was so funny. But they absolutely did a great job covering this entire tournament.
And they were having fun. They were dancing.
Oh, yeah. They
Their
had
outfits,
a great time together.
All their outfits were on point. Again, I thought I was going to lose my wife when she saw Andrea Carter. You looked at me and you were like, she is so hot. And I was like, she is.
You can't deny it.
I'll see you. I don't know.
She also
Never.
played for Tennessee. It must be a thing with Tennessee players. I don't know.
But we got to see Dawn up there, up close and personal.
She was dancing and
yeah.
she was getting interviewed by Aaliyah Boston, a former player, which is really cool. But Dawn was so happy, and she is so authentically herself at all times, and I just love it.
So then after the game, we went and got dinner. We got back to our hotel. We're exhausted, but what did we do?
We rewatched the entire game on TV so we could hear the commentators and see the game from a different perspective and watch it with less stress because we knew the outcome.
Congratulations to South Carolina. Congratulations to Iowa on an amazing year.
Yes, go Cox.
Okay, Danielle, switching things up a little bit, let's get into the highlight reel for this week.
So the one highlight I wanted to talk about is Caitlin Clark's career as a whole. She's about to go into the WNBA draft. We cannot end this episode without talking about her career. She has broken so many records this year. So I will talk a little bit about her stats. She is now the all-time leading scorer in NCAA men's or women's, which we know she broke earlier this year. She ended her college career with 3,951 career points. Almost 4,000 career points. That is insane. It is a great feat if you are a scorer to score 1,000 points in your entire career, whether you're in high school or college. She almost scored 1,000 points per year. And she scored over 1,000 points this year, but almost 4,000 her whole career. She ended her career with 990 rebounds and 1,144 assists. To have that many points and that many assists means that she was not only part of the points that she scored, but she had her hand on so many other points that were scored because she assisted that point.
Yep.
Over the course of her career, so not just this season, her entire career, she averaged 28.4 points per game. Her off nights, she would score like 20 points.
Yeah.
If you have a 20-point night, that's a huge deal.
Yes.
And that's Caitlin Clark's off night.
And we were talking about Nika Mule before, holding her to 20 points and doing an amazing job.
Just crazy. There were people of all ages wearing Caitlin Clark gear at these games.
Yep.
It didn't matter what gender, didn't matter what age they were wearing Caitlin Clark gear. She's the only player on the floor in that arena that every single person in the arena knew. There were over 18,000 people at the games for the Final Four weekend. Her career, and especially over the past season, because I think last year more and more people started to recognize who she was, but this year especially, I'm sure there were people last year who didn't know who she was that now do. As we mentioned earlier today, I really hope her career in this past season continues to lift up the women's game. I'm excited to see how she lifts up the WNBA as well, because as soon as she announced she was going to the W, the Indiana Fever ticket sales started to get more expensive and people started to buy them. And that's what you want, because this is hopefully going to bring better TV deals for the league. And then as a result of that, more viewers. And as a result of that, everyone will be getting paid more. Really hope that is the case. And I really hope people continue to watch the college game thanks to Caitlin Clark, because a lot of those eyes saw other players because they were there to see her.
A rising tide lifts all ships, and like Dawn said, it was a heavy burden for her to carry, we have to be thankful that she was willing and able to do it.
I couldn't imagine being in her shoes. It was another record-breaking weekend in terms of viewership. For the UConn and Iowa game, there was over 14 million viewers. For the South Carolina versus Iowa game for the national championship, there were 18.7 million viewers. So the most watched college or professional game, men's or women's, since 2019. The viewership peaked at 24 million views.
From the fact that March Madness wasn't even used in the name for the women's tournament to now that it is and it's just exploding, it just proves that when you invest in women's sports, people show up, they spend their money, and people watch. It's not that difficult. People have been missing out on a lot of money. We as a society have been missing out on great basketball because of people just didn't think people were interested, and they were so wrong. And it's great to have these additional fans, and they're new fans, and they have some things to learn along the way. Some of the history as well of how we got here. But I want the Iowa fans to stay. I want to see them in Tampa. And even if Iowa's not there, fingers crossed that this is just the beginning and this skyrockets from here. And translates to the WNBA as well.
So congrats to Caitlin Clark on an incredible career. Excited to see what she does in the WNBA and excited to watch those games. And guess what? Those games are 2 months away from now, which is insane. So she doesn't have much time to think about this loss because she's getting ready for her WNBA career.
Yeah, she'll be in an Indiana Fever jersey in no time.
Crazy. So we did say we were going to get back to our regular programming. I know you've been dying to talk about softball, so let's give us the update.
So happy we did the deep dives on basketball, and I'm so happy that we're going to cover more because this has been stressful. Softball, number 5 Texas beat number 1 Oklahoma this past weekend. This was Oklahoma's first conference series loss in 13 years.
Wow.
13 years Oklahoma has not lost a series in their conference. They play 3 games usually in a weekend. Texas dropped the first one on Friday night and then beat them twice over this past weekend 2-1. It's the first time Texas won a series from the Sooners since 2009. Oklahoma has been sitting up at number 1. Duke softball moved into the number 1 spot. We talked about them a couple weeks ago. They are a new program.
Yeah.
Little baby program, 4 or 5 years old, and they moved into the number 1 spot.
That's some good recruiting right there.
This softball season is about to get real messy, and I'm here for it. Can't wait to watch some more.
Okay, so now let's get into what we are looking forward to in the coming week. As I said, the WNBA season is not far away. Well, guess what? The draft is this coming Monday, April 15th at 7:30 p.m. on ESPN. Can you believe the draft is a week after the national championship?
It's a smart move marketing-wise, I think. It just feels crazy.
The WNBA commissioner, Kathy Engelbert, who we've met before, will announce the draft picks live on ESPN. I wish I had the video of you hugging Kathy.
Like I knew her.
Like you knew her. This also marks the first time that the draft will be a live seated event. So fans can actually attend the draft. First time since the 2014-2016 drafts. And they were held at the Mohegan Sun where Connecticut Sun plays. This year it will be in Brooklyn, New York, which is so cool. I've heard that it was really hard to get tickets for this. Like people were really excited about it.
Taylor Swift level hard to get those tickets to get in.
I love that. Indiana Fever gets the first picks. Who do you think they got?
Oh, I have no idea.
I'm sure Caitlin Clark will be wearing that uniform real fast, right? Her and Aaliyah Boston will be teammates.
Which is great. And I cannot wait to see the WNBA draft outfits.
So I love seeing what the players wear. So that's what I'm looking forward to. What are you looking forward to?
I want to talk about the 2024 International Ice Hockey Federation Women's World Championship. It is already going on, but on Thursday, April 11th at 8:30 p.m. Eastern time, the quarterfinals begin. The U.S. has made it to the gold game in all of the 22 IIHF Women's World Championships. They have won gold in 6 of the last 8 tournaments. They are dominant, and they have a really great rivalry with Canada. They most recently won gold in 2023 when they defeated Canada 6-3. And the U.S. is led by Kendall Coyne-Schofield, who actually plays for the Professional Women's Hockey League, the Minnesota team. She's a forward. She's having a great tournament so far. So those quarterfinals begin on Thursday. I'm excited to watch. They will be on the NHL Network and ESPN+.
Awesome. That's it for this week. We will see you next week on Women's Sports Weekly. In the meantime, watch women's sports. Rate and subscribe to the pod on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. Share the podcast with your family and friends. Keep sending us topics you want us to cover on Instagram at Women's Sports Weekly Pod. Thanks for joining us and see you next week.
Let's go back to bed.